Welcome. My name is Anindita. I'm a functional medicine certified health coach, and today I'll be talking about a topic that is very close to my heart. It's the hidden elephant in the room, right? So it's there, it's everywhere, all around us, but we typically overlook that, or we don't really get to see it. And it is an important contributor towards many diseases like cancer, diabetes, and autoimmune conditions, and even other very common conditions like diabetes, neurological issues, dementia, autism, fatigue, depression, right? So this is something that is often overlooked by not only many medical professionals, but even by us, because we are not really told. And I'm going to share with you why we have been overlooking this. Of course, it is the toxins, the chemicals that are found in our world, all around us, the air we breathe, the products that we use are in our houses, external, internal. So I'll be talking quite a bit about it, but I was with a friend of mine in a supermarket a few years ago, and we were doing some grocery shopping, and we reached the breakfast aisle section. It was a large grocery shop, so she wanted to buy a breakfast cereal for her young son, and she reached out to pick a very popular breakfast cereal. In fact, this was one of the cereals, Fruit Loops, which I had given my daughter many years ago, before I knew what were some of the ingredients that were inside this cereal and many other cereals like this, these highly processed foods, and what kind of impact they have on our children's health and even our health for that matter. So I read the ingredients out to her, and amongst, of course, other ingredients, I pointed out that the colors, the flavors, and the preservatives that were added, so I pointed these out to her. So she's never really paid attention. I mean, just like me, I had never really paid attention, say about 14, 15, 16 years ago, to the kind of ingredients that are typically found in these kind of foods. So things like artificial flavors, colors like yellow 1, yellow 4, yellow 5, blue 2, blue 1, red 4, right? We don't really pay attention to all these. These are all different chemicals which are toxic in nature, and preservatives like BHT, BHA. So imagine, taking all of this in, ingesting all of this, and in particularly for a child who is still developing, whose body is still developing, whose detoxification organs are still developing, and imagine the kind of impact that it has on the children's health. And in fact, this kind of toxin exposure is one of the leading contributors to the huge rise in incidences of autism, ADHD, allergies, eczema, so all of it. But it also impacts each and every one of us, not only our kids. And so no one basically is impervious to the effects of any of these toxins, right? Not any of us, whether we show symptoms initially or not, it is affecting each and every one of us, in some way or the other. And this came out as a research that I started doing in about 2015 as a part of the functional medicine protocol that I was following to help manage my daughter's severe eczema. And that's when all of this came to light for me. The kind of impact that toxins have on our health was shocking, for me. Until then, even I had been mostly oblivious to all of this, just like you. I had heard about, obviously I knew about air pollution and some of the more obvious toxic exposures that you keep hearing about, like maybe lead or mercury, but I had no clue that there were so many chemicals in our foods that we consume, especially the processed foods kind of a thing, even the pesticides and the herbicides, and of course all the household products that we use. So all of that, there's so many such chemicals which are actually toxic in nature in our personal care products, household cleaning and laundry products. And it was, industrial activities. So it was an eye-opening, kind of time for me. And I made a huge shift over a period of time, not overnight, of course, to move towards more non-toxic kind of foods, etc. And so this is what, so I'm focusing on in today's training session, to make you aware of what are the things, what are the ways that toxins are impacting your health, your family's health, contributing to all different kinds of disease progression and how it does so. But let's start with what are some of the key things, key facets of toxins that you first need to be aware of, even before you we talk about that. So the first thing that I want you to be aware of where toxins are concerned, that any substance can be a toxin, whether it's natural or artificial, right? So artificial is easy to understand because it's man-made chemicals, that's typically what we would associate toxins with. But it can also be artificial, which means that even heavy metals, right, which naturally occurring heavy metals like iron, which we need, of course, in our body, transportation of oxygen to each and every cell, so formation of hemoglobin. But so iron can, in high doses is toxic for our bodies, right? So it's a naturally occurring heavy metal. So that's one example. And the second thing is, what is toxic for one person may likely be just fine for another person, which is why it becomes a bit confusing. Even in terms of things that we know, like smoking does cause lung cancer, but you would know of a heavy smoker who has lived to be 100 in spite of smoking every single day, and then you will have others who have died at the age of 32 or 44 with lung cancer, right? So you will have all kinds of such examples, which makes it quite confusing to understand that what is toxic for one person may likely be fine for the other one, right? So the third thing is that no matter where you reside in the world, you are being exposed to a multitude of toxins, right? You can't really escape it. And the problem is that you are exposed to a combination of toxins, not one toxin at a time, which makes it much more difficult to actually fathom and manage our toxin exposure. But that's what I'm here to help you with. And exposure can come from many sources, not only external that I've been talking about so far, but also internal, and I'll touch upon that briefly. So it can be metabolites produced by our own bodies, but which are not actually excreted out because of poor detoxification capabilities, or it can be produced by our gut bacteria. So there can be many reasons why why these exposures are internal, and internal exposures can be equally toxic in nature. The other thing is that toxins can be well managed and excreted by a healthy body to some extent, which is why it is so important that we focus on creating long-term sustainable health, because that naturally repels disease, right? So, and if you already have a pre-existing condition, even then you can work to move towards creating better health and supporting your own body's natural healing properties. So the question that you might be asking at this point is, so why don't we hear more about this? Like, why don't we actually get to know about how it's impacting, how these toxins are impacting us every single day? And there is an increasing in awareness. Like, even when I started on this path, this research 7 years ago, 2015, there was not so much of awareness around toxins, but now the good thing is that there is a lot of hue and cry. There is an increased level of awareness. So that's whether it's how these toxins and chemicals are impacting our own health, or health of all the other species, or in fact the entire planet, right? But again, the question that I was asking myself is, why has it taken so long to finally acknowledge the role of toxins and how it is impacting our health, right? Why has it taken so long to understand that, if there is so much of research? There is a lot of research actually which is available, but it's mostly because the conventional medicine approach and the research that that falls terribly short in terms of these kind of issues, right? So conventional medicine works brilliantly in the case of acute health issues, when there is a simple connection between something that is causing a disease, maybe like a virus or a bacteria, and an antibiotic. However, the minute the causes are due to multiple factors, like in the case of toxins contributing to different kinds of diseases, and in combination with other factors like lifestyle and diet, this model fails miserably, right? So unless there is a high level of exposure, toxic exposure, this fact is often overlooked by conventional doctors, and the connection between these toxins and disease progression is actually completely overlooked, right? So, and what makes it even more difficult is the fact that each of us is biochemically unique, right? That means that, even as I mentioned, right, so even if we're exposed to the same toxin, our bodies will differ hugely in the way that it detoxifies these toxins and the symptoms that develop. And this is why it makes it so hard to come up with hard and fast rules that will apply to each and every one of us. That means that that means that the approach that we need to take will have to be completely personalized, right, for each person. Plus, at the same time, there are quite a few myths around toxins, right? What we have been mistakenly believing all this time, but again, there's a huge amount of research that will shed light on a lot of these and tell us that these are actually not true. These are completely wrong, and this will help us become more clear on how much these toxins are actually impacting our health and what we can do to reduce our exposure, right? So I'm not going to go through the entire list, but some of the most common myths around toxins are, number one is that we aren't really exposed to that many toxins and we are not in toxin overload, right? But again, this is being simply this myth is being simply dismantled and disproven because of the entire body of research that is actually available for each and every one of us. This is not true. We are being exposed on a daily basis. The air that we breathe, the foods that we are consuming, they have all kinds of chemicals. The personal care products that we slather in our bodies, they have a whole host of chemicals which are impacting our health. Our skin is actually a giant organ. So it's a myth that we are not exposed to toxins and that we are not in toxic overload. Like it's unfortunate, but the reality is that we live in kind of a toxic soup, right? The second myth that I want to bust today is that we often believe that all chemicals that are produced and that we use in various products have been thoroughly tested to safety. That's actually not true at all. More than 2,000 chemicals are, new chemicals are being introduced each year, and only less than 2% of these chemicals, at least in the US, are being tested for safety. And there are a lot of also limitations in terms of testing, because as you will learn in this session that there is a lot of synergistic effect of toxins that have an effect on our body. That means that one particular toxin may not have much of an effect, but when you combine with another toxin, it has an exponential effect in our bodies, which is what makes it so damaging, right? Which is the next point actually, that the dose makes the poison. So again, we have been led to believe that as long as we are under a certain threshold of dosage, we should be fine. That's actually not true, because we know that combinations of certain toxins produce significant effects when each chemical is present at a dose that is lower than the threshold, right? Even lower than the threshold. It's just that they are in combination. The impact can be exponentially significant, which means that the impact of toxin exposure is not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. It can be, and it's not even 1 into 1 is equal to 10, but it can have an exponential effect, right? Which makes it so damaging. And there's a clinical study, and the problem is that even with studies, no study is going to be able to quantify this precisely, because as I mentioned, that each of us are biochemically unique individuals, right? So it's going to affect each of us individually, differently. And the last myth that I want to bust today is that toxins play a role in disease in only in extreme and rare cases, right? In only extreme and rare conditions will you be able to pinpoint and say this is because of this toxin. That's actually not true. Almost all chronic diseases, toxins have some kind of role to play, because we know that the cumulative cocktail, which is a combination effects of toxins, can have a dramatic effect on our health, right? So all of these do contribute to disease progression. And finally, I do want to leave you with some ways that these toxin exposures are actually directly contributing to disease progression. Like, how are they actually impacting our health, right? I've been talking to you about some of the myths. I've been talking to you about some of the things that you need to be aware of when it comes to toxins and chronic disease, and in terms of figuring out how you might be exposed on a daily basis. But how do these toxins actually dysregulate your body, right? So that's what I want to focus a bit on now. So there are again many different ways, but these are the most common ones. One is that toxins damage your organs. So whether it's your liver or kidneys or your digestive tract, your toxins can impact any organ in your body. And the other thing is that it can impair detoxification as well, and your liver, your kidney, especially your liver being the most important detoxification organ, it can be kind of a double whammy, right? The second is that toxins can interfere with hormones. This is particularly true for a class of toxins called endocrine disrupting chemicals, which are found in many plastics, BPA, phthalates, artificial fragrances. So they are found in many products that you might be using in your house, and personal care products, and they mimic the estrogen in the body. So they disrupt the entire endocrine system, the hormonal balance in your body, and have a whole host of downstream effects. The toxins can damage cell membranes. That means that, and the cell membranes is the primary place where there's cellular communication which is happening, right? So that means that your cells are not able to function properly because there is a disconnect in the messages being sent, and properly ability to communicate. For example, that our muscles may not be able to relax in spite of the presence of magnesium because of this lack of communication. So these are some of the this is one other way. And finally, toxins can actually impair your body's ability to detoxify, which means that this is a big one, right? It's a double whammy. So not only are toxins causing a whole host of issues, it is also impairing our body's ability to detoxify, which is again leading to further issues. So it's like a vicious cycle, and this is a huge issue in the case of any kind of toxin. However, once you know that you're getting exposed, you can work on reducing your toxin exposure, and at the same time you can start supporting your body's own ability to detoxify, right? So focusing on long-term sustainable health is key here. Excuse me, I'm actually working from home, and that's my husband's cell phone ringing in the background. So it's going to stop. I'm going to keep finish this session here. So I will be talking more about how you can reduce your toxic load. What are some of the common toxins found in personal care products, in household products, in the next Facebook Live and the IGTV Live that I'll be doing next Friday. So if you want to know more about that and what action steps that you can take, do join me then. But I want to leave you with this. I know that it's kind of overwhelming to realize the way that we are getting affected by all kinds of toxins in our environment, and that we live in kind of a toxic soup, and that's having a huge adverse impact on our own health, our children's health. It is quite overwhelming, and it's but instead of despairing, I want to sort of give you the sort of make you become aware of how you can start thinking about toxins differently, so that you can actually now see the elephant in the room for what it is, that it's present, it's around you, it's everywhere, so that you can actually finally start taking the steps to prevent toxin exposure, right? And I want to leave you with this beautiful quote from Maya Angelou that I used to remind myself in situations like this. Do the best that you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better, right? So this is what I want to leave you with. I'm also hosting a masterclass on the 16th of November coming up, which is a Wednesday at 5 p.m. IST, and it's called Reducing Toxin Overload and Supporting Your Body's Detoxification Process. And it's going to help you explore, what I have been talking about today in depth, and take practical steps to protect yourself and your family from toxin exposure. And I'm also going to more importantly, I'm going to help you with this by providing a guide which is called Making Your Home a Safe Place, which will give you a comprehensive list of products that you can switch to. These are non-toxic products which will be free of most of the chemicals that I'll be taking you through in the masterclass, and it will help you to just make it much easier to switch from the ones that you've been using to these, and again sort of reduce your toxic exposure overall. So I'm going to drop in the link below the post in Facebook, and it's going to be there in the bio. So if you're interested in the masterclass, do sign up. The details of that will be shared with you in the link, right? So I'll see you soon.